This is Henry Frederick of Headline Surfer, and I'm here today with a distinguished panel of local contributing writers to the internet newspaper. And this is the inaugural edition of our show, The Roundtable, a weekly public affairs and news show. To my right is Sally Gillis. She has her online website of her own called sallygillis.net. She's up in the Ormond Beach area. Over here is Stan Escudero, Executive Committee Chairman of the Republican Party of Volusia County, retired ambassador in foreign service to several presidents, from Daytona Beach Shores. And to his right here is Bob Tolley, resident watchdog of New Smyrna Beach, and one of the more outspoken citizens of the community, with a good heart. And this is our discussion, and we're going to get right to it. So I think the two main things that we were talking about was Governor Scott's visit to Daytona and Friday's qualifying. So Stan, why don't you lead us in with your thoughts on the governor's presentment, first at your Republican headquarters and at the Ocean Center.
Well, as to the governor's visit, I thought it was very significant for several reasons. First of all, for Volusia County as a whole. I mean, it's certainly true, as the Wall Street Journal has said, that Volusia County is perhaps the critical county and the most important swing state in the country for this federal election. Here is Volusia at the east end of the I-4 corridor, and in the last election, some 43% of the state's votes were cast along this corridor. This is a county which has traditionally been slightly Democratic, but which is contested in a variety of ways. So the governor coming here indicates that Tallahassee recognizes the importance of the county for not only for the state but for the federal election. Secondly, it's very important to us, to Republicans, that he honored our new headquarters and our new Romney Victory Center with his presence on that same day. He gave us an hour and a half. We had about 200 people there. They're all fired up, and he gave an excellent speech. It was a great morning.
Yeah, I mean, we've been to enough of these things over the years where things are kind of like ceremonial and everybody's in their best behavior. But Scott coming in, he was just like an everyday guy, and he spit out these facts and figures. He seemed to be really like he was on the ball, more so than a typical politician coming to a town would be.
Well, that's the thing about Governor Scott, and I will tell you, I've been involved in politics in one way or another almost all my adult life. Now, Governor Scott is a very real person. What you see is what you get. He's a businessman. He's an ordinary fellow. He doesn't think of himself as an elite personage. He doesn't think of himself as the governor. He's Rick Scott, and he's very approachable. But he has all the facts at his command, as a good businessman should, as a good political leader should, but as so very few do.
And he carried himself well. He was demonstrative, but he wasn't obnoxious about it. He was very friendly, but firm, which is kind of funny because at the packed Ocean Center for the luncheon with the Tiger Bay Club and the Daytona, Halifax area Chamber of Commerce, yes. You remember that heckler?
I do indeed, yes.
Funny, she was from right here in New Smyrna Beach, with her signs of, I don't remember what they said, but it was ironic to me how the TV cameras all followed her as she was being escorted out of the hall, and he just stood up there on the podium and just kind of took a step back and just let her do her thing.
Well, the governor has seen this kind of thing before. The lady was clearly, if not a professional, certainly an intentional heckler. Her purpose in coming in, yes, of course, her purpose in coming in was to create sensationalism of the sort that drives the focus of TV cameras, and it did. And I'm sure that she probably got more play than any other thing except the governor himself on the evening news, on the local news, and that was her intention. She was wanting to publicize both herself and the issue that she was pushing, which was the removal from the voting rolls of illegal voters.
I also thought it was very respectful that, despite the fact that it was obviously started off as a partisan thing showing up at the Republican headquarters, that there were a lot of Democrats at the Ocean Center that, in terms of officialdom. The governor, he doesn't come to town there very often, so it's kind of an important thing, and I thought that the crowd was very balanced in that respect.
Well, yes, I thought that reflected it. You saw most of the members, for example, of the of the county council there, and of the 7 members, 6 are Democrats.
Right.
They were there, and they were very interested in what the governor had to say. You saw a number of high-level donors present, most of whom give generously to Democratic causes, and yet they were there to hear what the governor had to say because they recognize that the governor is the governor of everyone in the state of Florida, and that Republican or Democrat or Independent, everyone here in Volusia County is affected by what he says and what he does.
Well, I thought it was also gracious, as you remember, and for the benefit of the people out there, Sally and Bob weren't at the thing, but you and I were at both functions.
Yes.
I know you were sick, Sally. The situation with the way Evelyn Lynn, the state senator, the outgoing state senator, 18 years.
Yes.
The way he treated her, like he gave her that respect, and she was very animated. And of course, we have an interview with her that will be part of this segment that the viewers can click on after this discussion. But I just wanted to get your take on the idea of, everybody talks about term limits, but here was a woman, a politician, elected official that kind of like was even-handed.
Yes, I would say so. Evelyn Lynn is very, very popular, not just with Republicans, but also with a great number of Democrats. Not because they regard her as a moderate Republican, or because sometimes she votes moderately and sometimes she votes conservatively. They regard her, and I think Republicans do too, as a fair person. Someone who takes a look at the issues and makes a decision based upon the merits of the issue.
Well, let's turn to Bob and Sally in terms of qualifying now, where Stan gave us the presentment of the governor and coming into qualifying, and here we are now where you go from partisan races to mostly non-partisan, or where if you're Democrat or Republican, it's not on the ballot, even though behind the scenes there's a lot of maneuvering on both parties. Bob, what was your impression of qualifying? There seemed to be a lot of seats where there just wasn't opponents. A lot of uncontested seats.
It sends a loud message where the voter is. There are those that will say, who are getting reappointed uncontested, that they're doing a great job. I don't see it that way. Not at all. I think the voters are very angry. They're walking away from the meetings. They're walking away from voting. I can tell you in New Smyrna Beach, on any given city commission meeting evening, we're lucky if we have 5 people in the room. The rest of them that are there are looking for some handout, whether it's CRA money, grant money, etc. So when all that business is taken care of and they leave, you turn around, there's 5 people sitting there, sometimes less. So that speaks volumes as to what happened. So I don't look at it as they're doing a good job and they just walk back to the seat. I look at it as voter indifference.
I think it's kind of ironic that they're presented in the media and also by the supervisor of elections office, throughout the state as being re-elected when people didn't actually cast votes. I could understand where there's an incumbent possibly, but, like for example, in New Smyrna Beach, you had an uncontested seat where somebody was just, handpicked like, 6-7 months ago, and so that wasn't a re-elected thing.
No.
And it just seems like across the small town, Sal, what is your perspective on this? Do you think there's enough of a central core in terms of letting the public know about these elections in advance?
Well, the real problem is what Bob said. The apathy and indifference of the voters is unbelievable. I started out in politics about 25 years ago and got involved because a friend of mine ran for city council, and we wanted her to win in Boca Raton. Beautiful little town, very laid back, very wealthy, big balance in the bank, no debt. Well, by the time the developers, special interests, land speculators, and everybody got through with it, things were totally different. And they're the ones that have the money to send out the beautiful brochures that tell you how gorgeous the city is. And they're the same ones that are voting every day to give different zoning, to allow variations and things to be done to the buildings and the structures that are not to the benefit of a city. So first of all, I do not like any race that's uncontested. I think everybody should have to stand up and say what they're for. It's hard though, I ran for council twice, I ran for city commission once, or county commission once in Palm Beach County. And if you don't have the money, and you're up against somebody who can raise $113,000 at a snap of a finger, and your war chest is $5,000, it's pretty hard to make a change. When I ran against the county commissioner, I raised about $5,000, and she raised $113,000 from developers and special interests. I lost, but not by a huge landslide, by 56 to 44%, which tells me that even though they didn't know who I was, they had enough of her to know they wanted someone different. And that's why it's important to have two people in.
Well, let me ask you this, all of you can weigh in on this. Is it that there's voter apathy, or are the voters just, tired of the same old, the developers getting their perks, the hospitals with the taxing districts, the colleges with the trustees appointed by the governor, any number of CRAs and advertising authorities? It seems like there's so much focus now, especially in New Smyrna Beach, with both the advertising authority and the CRA with scandal. I just found it ironic that last year when there was that big police scandal in Little Oak Hill, the majority of the city commission, with all the resignations and maneuverings, ended up being a board that decided on the future of the police department and getting rid of it, where 3 of the 5 people were appointees. They weren't elected. One of them was unopposed in a previous election, and he actually took the place of somebody that decided not to run as an incumbent, and he had no opposition. And this time around, Oak Hill has 2 people for 3 of the seats that would be contested, including a former mayor who jumped in the race, Jeff Bracey, and then Linda Hyatt, the vice mayor, and the guy Doug Gibson, the commissioner that has come on strong. So Little Oak Hill is kind of like putting embarrassment to a city like New Smyrna Beach. That's 20 times the size, 22,000, 24,000, and there just was no energy. What's your take on that? Is it that the voters can't relate to the public sector salaries, the pensions, the high-priced city administrators?
The apathy creates another issue. By not showing up at the meetings, empowers the elected officials to take these issues the way they want to go.
Exactly.
When you have 4 or 5 people out in the audience confronting these officials, it has no sway. When you have a room of 100 or 200, such as we did recently with the Dixie Queen discussion, they listen to them. Delta Queen.
Right.
This is the problem that we're having. So they sit there and they decide, well, let's who's out in the audience. There's 5 people, same 5 faces. We're going to do what we want to do. My anger goes to the voter, the citizen, because they're allowing this to continue election after election. And those that are involved, we sit there, we're very frustrated because, we go to the podium, we take them to task, they blow us off, and they just go down the path.
Now, how long have you been doing this? 10, 12 years?
12 years.
Would you say that maybe over time, people have gotten used to someone like you that becomes like the voice, the sort of the citizen voice for them, and they're just as content just to sit at home and maybe listen to it on a computer through an audio feed, or read a snippet in the next day's paper, agenda, government reporting? Or do you think that maybe that's part of the problem, that the reporting is so linear that the meeting hall becomes the center of attention and the politicians put on a show?
Well, let's look at the media's impact on this for a minute. When we look at the News Journal, many of the articles that I read in there, or the citizens read in there, were paid for, either directly or indirectly. When you're doing all the advertisement with a certain paper, the paper's not going to turn around and accurately respond or report what went on in the meeting. I've been at meetings where there were very critical issues that were brought up and discussed, never even showed up in the News Journal.